Greetings, chess friends. We are back today with 10 examples from one of the greatest players, Jose Capablanca. One of my favorite players and absolutely just naturally talented, gifted individual, originally from Cuba. I believe lived quite a bit of time in the United States as well, but his endgame prowess was legendary. And we're going to see a lot of that today from the time he was even a young boy until world champion and beyond. So let's start with the first one. Try to give some real lessons with these amazing examples, the sort of highlight reel of Capablanca. But I want to point out a few things so we can actually learn and get better at chess. So he is white in this one. We have the opportunity to make a pass pawn. You can make a pass pawn. How do you know, or if you can look quickly and tell? When you have more pawns than them, strength in numbers. So you have 4 versus 3. Almost always you can make a pass pawn. G5. The problem is that the black king is likely to get there. I think it's still winning, but he played a creative and nice move, B4. Shocking, but again, creative. If the c pawn takes, king takes d4, and that gives us a pass pawn here, and like we said, we can make a pass pawn here. Actually, white is winning. 2 pass pawns is going to be enough, and our king can stop this one. Okay. If a pawn takes, well, we're going to see. That's what happened. A5. G5. Notice pass pawn here, pass pawn there. Really stretching black's defenses. That's the key here. Capture, 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 capture. B3, and again, the white king is able to stop these 2 passers as they're not too far apart. Essentially, the further apart the pawns are, the harder it is for a king or perhaps a knight or other pieces to stop, the further away they are. So king d7, I don't know what that really does, but the idea is clear. Capture, capture, and black resigns. This pawn is able to be stopped, but not both. So one of those will queen, and one of these will not. Win for Capablanca. A similar one here, similar in the double pawn structure. So remember, we started this one here with black with this kind of inherent weakness. White also double pawns, I should mention, but when we play h4 and g5, actually the pawns are all nice and compact and helping each other along. Big difference between that and this one here. These pawns rather weak, although these ones also weak, but white has quite an advantage here. So material equal, but white owns kind of the pawn breaks, so to speak, here on the queen side and the open file. White notices kind of a classic weakness here. Not only are the pawns doubled, and you should really be cautious early in the game when you make these captures because they do cost you here late in the game, but actually this pawn here really is where Capablanca has his sights. Watch the king, as well as a few other positives. Watch the king here. King c3, king b4, king a5, and there now black puts a stop to it, but a lot of progress made. Notice the black king really doesn't want to move anywhere else because of king a6. Pawn a6, that gives actually the king a moment to move. H5, b4. And like I said, we have actually the ability to make pawn breaks. Some sort of progress here. And that's what happens. Rook g7. And a nice invasion. Actually, white is threatening the move b6 here, as well as rook takes h7. Capture, capture, equal material still, but just think to yourself, whose king is more active? Clearly white is more forward in the game. Whose rook is more active? Threatening this pawn, clearly white. And who has the better pawns or potential to make a queen? Probably this one here. We have quite a weak pawn here and here. White is winning in really all phases. The engine says roughly equal, but practical chess, I would say that actually black is really struggling here. He plays king b8, the only move surviving, not a hard move to play, but if king a7, you lose the pawn. If king c8, oops, that's checkmate. Be careful. So king b8 played in the game. Rook takes h7, and this pawn, just with a big smile on his face, says, thank you. Check, check, and captures the pawn on f2. Rook e7, again, going for the weaknesses here, h6, And again, remnants of the classic win over Tartakower, allowing a Czech to advance his king and really advance this H pawn. Now the threat is, of course, to promote. We're always going to be able to play check and then promote. And all we need to do is avoid a bunch of pesky checks here, check here. And again, this was the point. The pawn is promoting, and it's going to cost black a rook. Queen and takes. Actually, a very easy win here for white, although it might seem like maybe in some universe 3 pawns can. Not here at all. The king for white is very close by, and the pawns have barely got off the starting line. So very easy cleanup and conversion here. He plays king d4 and black resigns. So a little bit of a long one, but nice to see Capablanca winning in that rook and pawn endgame. This one. Are you kidding me? Bishop takes a6. That's the type of move, really reminds me of Grandmaster would see while a lower rated player would not. And I've been that lower rated player before. Just unbelievable. Bishop takes a6, captures the rook in between, c6, and the game is as good as over. These 2 pawns absolutely dominate, compensate, and there's no way for black to really keep the balance. A next move coming here, just beautiful, c7, the best move. Rook c5, the only way to delay here, but rook takes e4, that's a check. By the way, we have 2 pawns now for the knight, but they are incredibly well protected, advanced, great pawns, not your average pawns there. Rook e7 hits the knight, d7, and that is threatening to queen. How do you stop queen? You can't play rook takes c7. There's no useful checks here. He plays knight takes, rook takes, and that doesn't stop anything. Similar to an earlier example, he's going to play rook d8 check and promote on the next move. It's all about the passed pawns, folks. Wait till you see what a 12-year-old Capablanca comes up with. Not this one. This one is a quick one. Queen check, queen sack. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Just understanding the rook behind the passed pawn. The games of Capablanca are just fundamentals of chess encapsulated. The top players don't fall for these anymore, and there's so much more resistance. But when you see tactics like this, you just have to be amazed at his not only tactical prowess, endgame understanding. He put himself in a better position to find tactics. Morphy's opponents, some 60 years prior, Morphy's opponents just gave him all kinds of tactical possibilities. Capablanca really put his opponents into these positional binds, terrible positions, struggling with their pawn structure and such, and then he unleashed the tactics. Let's see another one. Just great understanding here. Typically, you would think that here, opposite color bishops, the word is draw, right? Always draw. When you have the opposite color bishops, they don't have the ability to fight each other. But when you're Capablanca and you can really get to the details of an endgame, he's able to win not even just one of these, but 2 against formidable opponents. Here, Nimzowitsch of the My System fame with the white pieces, Kappa with the black pieces. Bishop takes c4. That's a piece sack in the endgame. Of course, if you take a2, wait a minute. Bishop can just stop that pawn. Did he blunder here? Not a chance. h4, and next move will be, let's say, king b3, g3, and that's really where the magic happens, h3. And that same kind of overloading the pieces. You can even guard this square, stopping that pawn, but the bishop just can't be in 2 places at once. Either pawn you want to push is completely winning. Here, let's say h2, capture, a1 queen. Beautiful ending. The game didn't go like that. He played king takes, b5, c3, and again, we're going to have the ability, have to do it patiently. The endgame is not about rushing, but we have the ability to make pass pawn on the queen side and a pass pawn on the king side. The further apart they are, the better, because it will stretch the defenses here. Check. King c4. Again, the king is in a wonderful place. Capablanca, amazing with his king, amazing with the pass pawns. Those are just the fundamentals of chess. And even his pieces, guarding here, guarding there, always on the right squares. b3, and now you see that this bishop has to stare at this square. He says, come on, just take this pawn, but you can't. He plays here g3, similar to the variation we saw earlier. h3, two passers, can't be stopped. And this pawn is absolutely no threat to queen all the way here. In fact, white just gives it away. King d3, that's not hanging a piece. We're just pushing. King h2, and this king supports the pawn. The bishop is going to have to sacrifice here, b2, and white resigns. One last thing I'll mention, bishop does sacrifice. This queening square is a light square, and that is important. We have the light squared bishop that we can control that square. Had it been the other bishop, even if this pawn had been able to stay alive, but we had the other bishop, actually would be a draw. Very, very instructional. Let's see Capablanca again with the opposite color bishops. This time 2 pawns ahead, but it's not easy. He finds a way to make another pass pawn. Remember, folks, if we're learning anything today, it's all about pass pawns in the endgame. That is how you win. Captures, of course, we're going to take back. No. Pass pawn, more important. Black says, okay, fine. Gives it even right back because he needs to guard that light square. 2 pawns ahead we remain. It is check. King b7, c5, a temporary sacrifice, which is able now to create another pass pawn. 2 versus 1. It's all about strength in numbers. Here we have 2 pass pawns, almost the same strategy as the last one. Likely the king will force this bishop to sacrifice for the g pawn here, and then we're able to win with this extra pawn and bishop very easily. Capablanca. This one just brought a smile to my face. I'd actually seen a few new games I'd never actually even seen, which is always fun from Capablanca's catalog, which is so rich. I definitely recommend, obviously. G6. White is completely winning, although 2 pawns ahead, they are doubled. You could imagine some defense somehow. But really, this knight just dominates and is the best piece on the board. These pass pawns, and they nearly checkmate the black king. Here, knight e8. Look at that move. The knight with a huge smile on his face cannot be taken due to g7. And promotion is unstoppable. The knight sits there. Next move, knight d8. And the knight just stays on e8 while Capablanca goes about his business. b5. g5. We play g6, g5, g7, g6. Have you ever heard of that in a chess game? g6, then g5, then g7, then g6 again. Probably a series of moves which has never been played. And black resigns. You cannot even stop checkmate here. Let's just play any old move. Bishop b7. Just a move. There's no stopping. Checkmate. You can throw the pawn in the way. Okay, let's just move. And checkmate is unstoppable. Beautiful endgame. Still looking for tactics. Really just sensational. I mean, his class shows through. Some games, even simuls, are really, really instructional. If you are below 2200, below 2000, I really recommend looking at even simul games where he's just beating up on the local guys. So they're very instructional. Here, b3, that guards the pawn. Capablanca black. Let's compare the pieces. Knight, the best piece on the board. Let's admit that white's knight is pretty good too. Our rook, better placed. This one just a defender. Our king, better placed. The pawn, very far advanced. That shouldn't be understated. It's the only pawn that's crossed the middle of the board. It's the furthest advanced pawn. And look at this beautiful chain. The fun doesn't stop there. White's best piece, the knight, is gone. It's gone. And now, although the game is slightly good for black, black is better. It's not easy, but all the play is with black. It is a hard position to defend, and actually white is just losing. g5, the point is to play f4. And there it is. He doesn't even bother allowing any type of trickery here. F4, get to the point. We have a C5 trying to make a pawn break on the king, on the queen side. F3. What's important? Black understands that the 2 pawns combined with knight and our king is a very formidable team. E3. Rook E1, looking to perhaps sacrifice, and Kappa slows down. If this pawn were to be able to capture and get a step, it could be gone. He instead pumps the brakes and plays B takes C5. Rook takes E3, king takes. B takes A5 and C4. Finally, white resigns. That's just too much. A little desperation there towards the end, but I absolutely love rook takes knight. I have a tendency to do this a lot, the sacrifices of an exchange. Here, though, the extra pawn in exchange are very good, but the placement of them is what really makes it. Oh, not always is a knight and pawn going to beat a rook, but when the rook has no open files, the knight is perfectly placed. Beautiful chain majority. It all clicks. Let's look at the youthful Capablanca, 12 years old. And again, with those G pawns, reminiscent of the one we saw earlier, I'll mention this, and great advice for those learning and improving at chess. When there is an endgame, pawns on both wings. So we have pawns, a couple on the queen side, a few on the king side, or one here, one there. 2 sides, there's action, clearly in this game. That should favor the bishop. Bishop can reach this side, left and right, very quickly. The knight is a slower piece. But when there's a lot of pawns, it actually favors the knight. In this case, the knight is doing just fine. 7 pawns each. It's close quarters, a lot of traffic, as we would say. The knight is quite happy. Bishop not finding a ton of movement. Let's see how young Capablanca defeats the champion of Cuba and wins this game. They played a match, and Capablanca becomes the champion of Cuba. He was really a prodigy from a young age. Amazing. G4. What's the point? We want to trade. We want to open the roads. The diagonals, the light squares, of course, only ones we can use. G4, G5. There's a trade. Next one. G4 again. I love all these G-pawn moves we've been seeing. Captures, and he doesn't even take it. Bishop D3, hitting this one. That would create a passed pawn. Knight F5, king takes. Remember when we had a closed game? Everything tight together, hard to move. Now, things have opened up. Trades will do that. This pawn is the key. It's a passed pawn. There's action on both sides, and the knight, for black, is relegated to just being a defender. Help. The knight is saying, wait, I just have to sit here, babysit this little pawn. Kappa goes on to win. I'm going to spare you the next 25 moves or so, but white goes on to win this one, bishop versus knight. Try to get the games you want. Your pieces want to be happy. Knights like the closed games. Kappa says, no, we're opening doors, trading. Deep understanding for a 12-year-old. That game played in the year 1901. Last one here versus Frank Marshall, legendary grandmaster from the United States. And F3, this is really dangerous. Opening the entire 2nd rank or 7th rank, the absolute control, this pawn alive and well, even though it's doubled. He plays here a great move, rook d6, intending to double the rooks. And this bishop, although the knight is in the way, is also waiting to strike. Beautiful combination here. Knight F5 is threatened, but of course we're moving our rook anyway. That check is not too venomous. King F6, knight H4. That guards the G2 square, but Kappa plays another great move, understanding king's safety, because our king is quite safe here with this brilliant move. Knight F5, and our king is safe amongst the white pieces, I should mention. Black is fine. And rook G2. Pawn H2. That's threatening. Rook G1 is made. Pawn H1 is made. Here, F4, complete desperation. King takes F4. And notice king takes g4. Somehow is still winning, but you would allow a fork. But king takes f4, very human move, and white just resigns. Capablanca absolutely dominated the endgame. That's where the difference is between the amateurs and the masters, is in the endgame. Especially nowadays, you can really hold your own in the openings, but as soon as you're on your own 2 feet in unfamiliar territory, if you don't know where your pieces belong, if you are not paying attention to the pass pawns or comparing your kings and you're comparing the minor pieces or the rook endgame, knowing the theoretical endgames, you really need to level up your endgames if you want to be a better chess player. It might not be fun studying king in 1 pawn endgames, rook in 1 pawn versus rook endgames. But I promise you, once you master those, which is requirement, it's not an option, a requirement to get to a high level, you will start to save those games or win those games, and you'll make better middle game decisions, which is really where it starts to pay off in spades. So hope you all enjoyed this one. Capablanca, one of the legends, one of my favorites, and I really just enjoy helping everyone learn about chess, getting my thoughts out there, and reminiscing about the greatest chess players. Hope you all enjoyed and appreciate the view. See you next time.